How much is a decade of loyalty worth when it's auctioned off for a few hours of cheap thrill in a high-rise hotel room? I was staring at the answer, and it was glowing blue against the silk sheets of our bed at 3 in the morning while the city of Dallas slept outside our window. My wife, Sarah, was breathing softly beside me, her face a mask of porcelain innocence that I now knew was a calculated lie. Dee found taped to the underside of her mahogany vanity a device that did and exist in our shared digital life. The screen was an endless scroll of depravity, 10,000 messages dating back over a year, each one a jagged shard of glass cutting through the center of my chest. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were cold. As cold as the realization that the woman I loved had spent the last 14 months plotting my emotional execution. I looked at her sleeping form, and for the first time in 15 years, I did unsee my wife. I saw a predator waiting for me to wake up so she could continue the kill. I knew then that my life as I knew it was over, but hers was about to become a living nightmare. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The silence of our home in Highland Park felt heavy, like the air before a terminal storm. Just weeks ago, I would have described Sarah as the perfect partner. She was a senior consultant at one of the top firms on McKinney Avenue, a woman of grace, intellect, and what I thought was unshakable integrity. But the behavior had changed slowly, like a poison leaking into a well. It started with the late-night strategy sessions and the sudden need for a second gym membership in a part of town she never frequented. Then came the coldness. When I'd reach for her hand at dinner, she'd find a reason to check her watch. When I'd tell her I loved her, she'd respond with a distracted ma'am as her thumbs flew across her work phone. She made me feel small, like an old piece of furniture that was cluttering up her new, exciting life. She called me suffocating. I asked why she smelled like expensive cologne and Marlboro Lights, a brand neither of us smoked. She looked me in the eye, her expression full of practiced disgust, and told me my insecurity was the only thing wrong with our marriage. Then I found it. A small black smartphone hidden behind the velvet lining of her jewelry box. I spent 4 hours in the guest bathroom scrolling through a year's worth of betrayal. The man was Mark, her firm's managing partner, man whose hand I had shaken at Christmas parties. A man who had sat at my dinner table and toasted to our future. The messages weren't just romantic, they were architectural. They mocked my career, my personality, and even my performance in the bedroom. They shared photos taken in our own bed while I was away on business trips in Chicago. Sarah had sent him a photo of a Rolex I. Dee bought her for our anniversary with the caption, "Another bribe from the boar. Can't wait to be with a real man tonight." 10,000 messages. 10,000 betrayals. By the time the sun began to peek over the Dallas skyline, the man who had been a loyal, doting husband was dead. In his place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who was going to ensure that by the time I was finished, Sarah and Mark wouldn't have a shred of dignity left to cling to. I didn't confront her the next morning. I didn't scream or throw her clothes onto the lawn. Instead, I made her coffee, kissed her forehead, and watched her head off to work with a smile. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. That afternoon, I didn't go to my office. I went to a nondescript building in North Dallas to meet with a man named Elias, a private investigator recommended by a lawyer who specialized in scorched earth high-asset divorces. I handed Elias the burner phone and a check that felt like the first payment on my freedom. "I want everything," I told him. "Every hotel receipt, every parking garage, time stump, every sordid detail. I want to see them when they think no one is looking." Over the next 3 weeks, the evidence poured in. Elias tracked them to a boutique hotel in the Bishop Arts District 3 times a week, captured high-resolution photos of them kissing in the back of Mark's Audi, and video of them entering a luxury condo Mark kept on the side. The most damning evidence, however, was financial. Sarah and Mark weren't just having an affair, they were embezzling funds from the firm's silent partners to fund their lifestyle, funneling money through a shell company they thought was untraceable. Sarah was arrogant. She thought she was the smartest person in any room. She thought I was too broken and too boring to ever suspect her. She would come home and gaslight me, telling me I looked tired and maybe I should see a therapist for my paranoia. I would just nod, agree, and continue building the gallows. The breaking point came when I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen, thinking I was out mowing the lawn. Her voice was dripping with a sweetness she hadn't used with me in years. "Don't worry, baby," she whispered into the burner. "The divorce papers are already drafted. I'm going to bleed 'em dry for the house and the savings. Then we can finally be public." He's so pathetic. He has no idea he's paying for our honeymoon in St. Bart's. I stood outside the screen door, my grip tightening on the handle of the lawnmower until my knuckles turned white. She wasn't just leaving. She was planning to destroy me financially and socially to build a life with her accomplice. That night, I called my attorney. "Execute the plan," I said. No mercy. I chose the night of the firm's annual charity gala at the Ritz-Carlton. It was the biggest event of the year for the Dallas elite. Sarah was wearing a floor-length emerald gown, looking every bit the queen of the room. Mark was there too, acting the part of the distinguished mentor. They were so smug, so untouchable. They even shared a lingering, professional handshake in the lobby that made my skin crawl. I had spent the last week coordinating with the event. Save Techniciana, young guy who was more than happy to take a few $100 to update the night's keynote presentation. Halfway through the dinner, Mark stood on the stage to give his speech about vision and integrity. The massive LED screens behind him flickered. He started talking about the firm's record-breaking year, but the slides weren't showing growth charts. The first image was a crystal-clear photo of him and Sarah in the backseat of his car, their faces unmistakable. The room went silent to heavy, suffocating silence that felt like the air being sucked out of a vacuum. Then came the messages. The 10,000 texts began to scroll by at lightning speed, highlighted with the most disgusting quotes about me and the firm's partners. The final slide was a detailed ledger of the embezzled funds, complete with Sarah and Mark's digital signatures. I sat at our table, calmly sipping my wine, watching the blood drain from Sarah's face. She turned to me, her eyes wide with a terror I will never forget. "David, what is this?" she hissed, her voice trembling. "It's the truth, Sarah," I said, my voice as level as a horizon. "It's 10,000 reasons why we're done." The fallout was instantaneous and total. Security escorted Mark off the stage as two of the firm's senior partners' men they had stolen from followed them out with cell phones pressed to their ears, likely calling the authorities. Sarah tried to grab my arm, to beg to spin one last lie, but I simply stood up and walked away. I had already moved my belongings out of the house that morning. I had frozen our joint accounts and filed for a restraining order based on the threats she'd made in the messages. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal destruction. Because of the evidence of financial fraud, Sarah was fired immediately and barred from the industry. Her reputation in Dallas was incinerated. No firm would touch her. Mark's wife, a woman with a formidable family fortune and even more formidable lawyers, filed for divorce the next day, stripping him of everything he owned. He was eventually indicted on charges of corporate embezzlement. Sarah, the woman who thought she was too smart to be caught, ended up living in a cramped apartment in a part of town she used to mock, working a retail job just to cover her mounting legal fees. A month ago, I saw her from a distance. I was driving down Turtle Creek Boulevard in the car she had tried to take from me. She was standing at a bus stop, clutching a cheap plastic bag, looking 10 years older than the day I found the phone. Her arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, haunted stare. She saw me, and for a second, our eyes met. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel joy. I felt nothing at all. I just turned the corner and kept driving, toward a life that didn't include her. Tonight, I'm sitting in my new home, a quiet place overlooking the city. The silence isn't heavy anymore. It's peaceful. I sometimes think back to that 3 a.m. discovery, the glow of the screen, and the way my heart felt like it was dying. But then I realized that the phone didn't just show me her betrayal, it showed me the exit. She thought she was writing the end of my story, but she was only writing the end of hers. The house is cold, the wine is bitter, and for the first time in years, I can finally hear myself think. The end.